Do you want to improve your cutting technique? Today, I'm going to show you a method that's as simple as it is effective. A method that you can reproduce at home and that I hope will completely change your perspective. Thanks to this method, you'll be able to improve not only your cutting technique, but also all the different practices you might have in the garden. And maybe it's even broader than that. Today, I'm going to show you how to apply this method to propagating papyrus. But you'll see that once you understand the trick, you'll want to apply this method to all sorts of different plants. All right, let's get started. So, this method already has a name. It's simply called the scientific method. That's right, we're going to do science in the garden. For that you don't need a lab coat, even though I still have my lab coat. Here is green and an apron, not white or a lab coat. But you'll see that to do science, you don't need a laboratory, you need a method. And that's the method I'm going to try to explain to you by applying it to the propagation of papyrus. As I said, you can then use this method to propagate anything you want. To practice this method, you might also need your lab coat. What you really need is a notebook, a pen, a notebook. It could be a scratch pad or it could be on your phone. A note-taking app could also serve as a planner to schedule tasks, but the main point is to be rigorous. Record what you do, how, when, and where. Write down as much detail as possible. The scientific method is designed to prove what you've done, and above all, to conduct an experiment that others can reproduce, so that others can either confirm what you've verified or disprove it. Writing things down will also allow you to reproduce the experiment yourself at another time, and to see whether it works every time or if sometimes it doesn't work. And there you go, you understood that every time you get information that overlaps, confirms or disproves, your knowledge will progress. That's basically the concept. Now we're going to look in more detail at the method to see how to get information that will help us improve our skills. And I'll explain to you as well how. The idea to make this video came to me with the propagation of papyrus, and so I'm going to show you in detail how I apply this method to this propagation. And you'll already be able to try this experiment at home on papyrus and then on any other plants you want. Let's go. So here's how this idea came to me. And by explaining this to you, you'll see some of the details you really need to put into practice to be able to use this method. A while ago, I wanted to propagate papyrus. So a while ago, it was August 15th. So it's been about 3 weeks. So the cuttings are already well along now. And when I wanted to, I tried to improve my knowledge about this propagation method. Propagating papyrus is easy. We'll cut the stems with leaves and place them possibly upside down in water. However, what I still don't know is the best time of year to do it. And then when I wanted to cut these papyrus leaves, I noticed that there were some leaves that were a bit yellow and some older leaves that had already bloomed. And I thought to myself, hey, maybe one of them roots faster than the other. So first, tell me your opinion in the comments. Do you think both of them can be propagated? Maybe one of them doesn't even work. And how fast will both of them root and which one will be the fastest? And so now is when we're going to see how to practice this scientific method in detail. As I said, I like to say we're advancing knowledge because that's truly what we're doing. We'll expand our knowledge by sharing and interacting with others who garden around us. We're truly going to advance knowledge overall. So the method is going to be to try a cutting propagation technique by taking a papyrus stem and placing it upside down in water. But what we're going to do is not just that, we're going to vary this method. There are plenty of criteria that could change the idea. It's going to be like this. Be careful, it's important to do 2 experiments, but between these 2 experiments, there should be only one criterion that changes. 2 identical buckets filled with equal water at the same time. The only change is that one side has very young shoots that haven't flowered, while the other has old flowered shoots. And thanks to the fact that there's only one criterion that changes, well, we'll see if it works better on one side than the other, or if it works on one side and not on the other, or if it's faster on one side, and there you go. We'll really see the difference, and we'll know that it's that criterion that leads to the improvement. And by the way, be careful here. The result we're going to get doesn't mean that this cutting roots better than the other. It will mean that this cutting roots better than the other at this time of year with this method in this part of the world. There may be other places where the other cutting will work better. See, you need to be careful about your conclusions too. Interestingly, if we've recorded all the experiment's criteria correctly, anyone can reproduce it. And say, I confirm what you're saying, or say, well, no, in my case, it doesn't work the way you say. And once again, it's thanks to these results and the comparison of these results that we're going to advance knowledge. All right, now we're going to look at the results, and then afterwards we'll see how you can apply this to anything or everything. All right, bottom line, we'll start with the youngest papyrus plants, which hadn't bloomed yet. Well, first of all, everything is rooted. So we could say that this works. Everything is rooted. There's a root system that is overall quite developed. So to go back a bit to the scientific method, also you're doing a large number of tests. If we had just taken one stem from each side, the result wouldn't have been very meaningful. By doing several, we can see the difference. Here, everything is still pretty well rooted. We even have the beginnings of buds, the beginnings of stems. Just so you know, it's been 3 weeks since I made them, and everything is pretty well rooted, with some places even showing the beginnings of buds. And now let's look at the other side. On the other side, we also have a lot of roots, even a bit more. Well, already, in terms of roots, there are more roots on the older shoots. And where the difference is striking is, look at them. Where is it the most impressive on all of them? Look, we already have full shoots here, not just beginnings, but stems with leaves at the ends. You can see me well here, so on the cuttings from old leaves, there you go, you'll see it on all of them. We really have shoots that are already very, very developed everywhere. So there you go, a clear result. The old papyrus shoots that have already bloomed root much faster, much more quickly, and produce new shoots much more quickly. So first of all, I would say if you want to take cuttings at home, if you want to advance knowledge, do the same thing. If you just want to take papyrus cuttings, take the shoots that have already flowered, the oldest shoots, those are the ones that will put out stems and create new plants much more quickly. All right, now, the next step in the experiment will be to put all of this in a pot and possibly trim it so that it doesn't get in the way of all the old leaves. We could have done it sooner, but I finished quickly. I admit I didn't trim the leaves just to avoid them getting in the way. When we put it in the pot, if there are too many roots, if it's a problem, we can trim the roots a little. And then put the papyrus in a pot with a bit of potting soil. That way I'll have potted papyrus plants that will grow well. Because my idea is to have plants for sale, since I'm a nurseryman. Once the whole plant is in the pot, actually before that, we can cut this stem since it no longer serves the plant, and there you have a new plant for your home. If the idea is just to have papyrus growing in a pond, once you have roots like this, you can go ahead and plant your papyrus directly in the pond. And what if the idea isn't to do this experiment at all, and you just want to have papyrus cuttings or papyrus plants growing around your pond? Do it right from the start. Get a leaf from somewhere, plant it between 2 stones with its head in the water at the edge of your pond, and your papyrus will grow right there. You don't need to go through this whole process. Sometimes, for specific cuttings, continued observation may be helpful. Putting them in pots doesn't mean ending the experiment. You might still observe even after moving everything to pots. This one started off faster at first, and then in the end will end up stagnating, while the other one, which is younger, will start off more slowly but stay vigorous for longer. At this stage, it's still the same. Be careful about your observations and conclusions during the experiment. It appears more effective on cuttings from older papyrus shoots than younger ones, but don't jump to conclusions too quickly. That's a common mistake when observing the results of an experiment. Well, I'll also take this opportunity to give you a couple of ideas for things you can do with papyrus. These shoots here, these old stems with the leaves and the old flowers on them. It's very pretty, I find it very graphic. If you want to have a little decoration at home, put this in a small jar, in a small glass, in a small wine glass. It can look very nice. Trim the leaves a bit if they take up too much space. Leave the flowers because they look really, really nice in the pot. And that way you'll be able to watch a plant grow right before your eyes. You can even have 2 pots with different cuttings right in front of you. Well, after one on each side, like I said, the result isn't super interesting either, but it can still be cool to watch. We'll end with a few tips. As I was saying, once you know the method, you can apply it to many things and various types of cuttings. For example, here I have Malabar spinach growing. It was crawling on the ground, and I tend to want to tie it up to make it climb up, but it always tended to crawl on the ground. I noticed some stems crawling on the ground began growing roots. I'm not removing them yet since the experiment is new, but I find these shoots growing roots amazing. It's propagating itself, actually. It's layering itself, not propagating, it's layering itself on its own. And thanks to that, I'll get several plants. So what I did is that all the Malabar spinach shoots I had everywhere that were growing and crawling on the ground. Well, I put a lot of them in the sand, and next to that, I put some directly in the soil just to see what would happen. If I just put them in the sand and keep it moist, will they take root? I could make a lot, except for that, I have plenty of sand rings. And I'm thinking maybe it works better in soil than in sand, so I tried a bit in soil, and I'll see if it works well in soil. I need to find more soil to make more plants. If the sand works, I won't need to change my rings and can make many of them. The rings are for holding pots, like you've seen in other videos with potted plants. Behind my potted plants, I could place my cuttings in sand and grow many more plants. Here's one plant example, but whenever you want to propagate plants, experiment with various methods. And so, let me know in the comments below the video which plant you tried to propagate and what kind of method you used to do it. And what were the results of your experiments? You can even share the entire experiment protocol you used, so that we or others can try it ourselves. Carry out or repeat this experiment. So the protocol sheet that I use with all the different information, I'll put the link in the description and you can download it yourself if you want. Afterward, making your own protocol sheet is easy. Just record all the data from your experiment. I hope you enjoyed it and find it useful. Take many cuttings at various times of the year to test. And above all, give us the results of what you do so that we can all make progress together. If you enjoyed it, share it with others, subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up, all that helps with visibility. And as usual, if you want to support me, I'll put a little link to the Typee page for you. You'll find it at the top right of the video. Thank you to everyone supporting me financially, allowing me to keep making videos and doing experiments and sharing all of this. All right, thank you all. See you very soon. Bye.